Living in one place is so early 2000s. The 21st century has brought with it a new kind of lifestyle, that of digital nomads, aka people who earn a living by doing remote jobs while hopping from place to place. But is the lifestyle actually filled with the glitz and glamour that nomads say it is? Or is it actually a high-cost, scary, and unstable way of living? Let's find out just how digital nomads live, and if becoming one is the right fit for you. But first, let's clear some things up. What exactly does a digital nomad do? The life of a typical digital nomad is a little something like this. The first thing they need is a remote job. It could be anything, from freelance writing and proofreading, to website design, and even being someone's personal assistant online. People might think that the nomad life is only for people with deep pockets or trust funds, but trust us, digital nomads work 8-hour days just like everyone else. And most of them have pretty sweet jobs too. It's not unheard of for these nomads to be making over 80 grand a year while they move around. A retail 9-to-5 could never. The next thing they need is to not have a permanent place to live. After all, digital nomads wouldn't be nomads if they had roots, right? Now, that doesn't mean that they'll be traveling every single day. That would get way too tiring way too fast. They could stay in one place for a week or even a couple of months depending on how much they like it, as long as it's not permanent. Most digital nomads stay in one place for about 6 months. They could live in an Airbnb, a rented apartment, or even in a hostel. As long as there's a roof over their head, they're good to go. And the last ingredient for the recipe to becoming a digital nomad is to have a stable Wi-Fi connection. Hello people, this is the 21st century after all. No one can live without the internet, least of all someone who works a remote job. Digital nomads will settle down for a while in a cafe or a library or even a public office. They'll take their setup, which, let's be real, is just a laptop most of the time, and get their job done. And after they're done hustling, they can go exploring whatever new world they're in. Sounds like a very unique way to live, right? And it's no surprise that it comes with its very own set of pros and cons. So if you're on the fence about anyone choosing the nomad life, hear us out first. Let's talk about the benefits this life brings along with it. Pro number 1. They get to travel full-time. Do you ever get bored at seeing the same 4 walls, the same few buildings in your streets, and the same faces in your town? And do you ever feel like there's so much to do out in the world that you're missing out on? Well, digital nomads don't have that problem. If you're one of them, you can go anywhere in the world and stay for as long as you want. If you want to stay in one place for 6 months, go ahead. If you decide that some city just isn't for you, then you can hightail out of there as fast as you can too. That's the advantage of not having a physical workspace. You don't even need to ask for days off if you're going to be out of town. And that sounds like absolute heaven. Destination weddings, parties, extended vacations. Suddenly, they all become possible. But wait, it gets better because no experience is impossible. Snowboarding, surfing, mountain climbing, you name it. Nothing is out of your reach. And doesn't that sound like a dream come true? Pro number 2. Meet new people and cultures. See, there are so many amazing people out there that have no idea that you even exist. And if you stay in the same town or city for your whole life, then you have absolutely no chance of ever meeting them. That changes when you become a digital nomad. You'll be able to find communities all over the world, especially because the nomad community has absolutely boomed recently. There's no limit to who you can meet. And since you won't be living as a tourist, you'll get a taste of their lifestyle as well. But wait, what exactly do we mean by saying you won't be a tourist? Well, you won't be splurging everywhere, will you? Being a digital nomad teaches you to be modest, which means doing the same things all the locals are doing. You'll get to eat their street food, form connections with different religions, and even hear types of music that you had no idea existed. Maybe it's time to go international, because when you learn about others, you'll learn about yourself as well. Now, speaking of learning about yourself, pro number 3 is personal growth. We know, The notion of traveling to find yourself is very 2014 Tumblr, and most people seem to think it's outdated. But we think that the Tumblr community hit the nail right on the head. When you become a digital nomad, you're constantly exposed to new challenges. You'll experience things you never could have otherwise, even if it's just as simple as navigating a country's transportation system or dealing with disappointments. You'll have experiences that will be completely new to you, and that will transform you as a person. You know those people who claim that a trip backpacking across Europe or a semester abroad changed them as a person? Well, turns out they were right after all. Pro number 4, lower cost of living. Now, this might sound completely absurd to you, but hear us out for a second. Most popular nomad destinations are places that are a lot cheaper than your home country. The living cost in Mexico, Georgia, Colombia, or even places like Budapest is peanuts compared to New York. Then again, anything would be less compared to New York, right? But the point is, these countries offer living spaces, utilities, and groceries for a lot cheaper than in America or even the UK. These countries also offer everything you need. You have internet, safety, and co-working spaces, and all you need to do is walk outside to be greeted by gorgeous landscapes. And when you're spending a quarter of the living cost you would have at home, the added travel expenses don't even put a dent in your wallet. Now, we've sung the praises of the nomad lifestyle, but don't get it twisted. Before you quit your job to live a life like this, it's important to remember that it's not all glitz and glamour. Here are some things you have to keep in mind that turn some people away from becoming digital nomads. Con number 1, stress and the work-life balance. You've probably guessed it by now, but a lifestyle where you're constantly moving around is stressful. You'll constantly be trying to figure out your way around new places, get new SIM cards, find the best grocery store, and find accommodation. And that can be both exhausting and overwhelming. And just as a reminder, you're still working a job. This means that you might have to coordinate with clients or employers who live in completely different time zones. Now, imagine being jet-lagged on top of that and trying to find a place that has a working Wi-Fi connection. Some people might be able to deal with all of this, and to them, the pros more than make up for the stress. But to others, it sounds like an absolute nightmare. And some people are never able to solve this issue of finding when to work and when to stop. Many digital nomads burn out due to a lack of work-life balance and end up working way too much. Or they're too tempted by the attractions and sightseeing, and their work suffers as a result. It's a pretty thin line to walk, and you can fall over the edge at any moment. Con number 2, lack of stability. It's needless to say, a digital nomad doesn't have a home, and for freedom, they trade away their stability. You might have to stay in places where you're not comfortable at all. You might have to sleep in a rickety old bed, or in hostels that don't have the best utilities. You might even have to bunk with people who you completely hate from the get-go. Now, on top of that, you're independent, but you can't count on anyone. If you have a bad day, then there's no one to lift you up. And if you have a problem, then you're either completely on your own or relying on the kindness of strangers. And there's no guarantee about when you'll end up in a new place that checks off all your boxes of being somewhere good to live. And if you lose your job, then you don't have anything to fall back on. Con number 3, loneliness. While there's definitely the possibility of finding someone you connect with like no one else, it doesn't change the fact that loneliness will become a big part of your life. And even when you're big on alone time, it might get a little too much at times. Sometimes there will be a language barrier between you and everyone around you. In other instances, you'll have a cultural divide. Making friends is hard, and that can be tough on your mental health. Even if you're talking to other nomads, sooner or later, either you leave or they will. Dating is equally difficult because you might not stay enough to form a deeper connection. Even staying in touch with family is hard, and you'll have to skip out on special occasions. After all, you can't be there for, let's say, the birth of your nephew if you're halfway across the world, can you? Now, that's not to say that the life of a nomad can't be rewarding. We just mean that if you are considering becoming one, you should think about it very deeply before you make a decision. The cards are on the table and the decision is yours. Is the life of a digital nomad for you, or are the cons just too much of a deal breaker? Make sure to comment your thoughts down below. And while you're at it, smash that subscribe button and give the video a big old thumbs up too. We're always coming up with new videos, so make sure you're tuned in for next time.